You're listening to Boomers Today with your host, Frank Sampson.
Well, welcome to Boomers Today. I'm your host, Frank Sampson, and each week we bring you important, useful information on issues facing baby boomers, their parents, and other loved ones. And I just want to thank everybody for all their support. Our numbers are just skyrocketing, new listeners all the time, and it's because of you. You're sharing with friends and family, maybe particular shows you listen to and wanted to share, so we thank you for that. Many of you have gone to our website at boomerstodayradio.com, but I would say the majority of you are listening right on your phone, maybe when you go for that stroll in the morning on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Of course, we have our own app on your Android or iPhone, Boomers Today. Just type in Boomers Today. You could download it and get all of our interviews with some wonderful people. And that's probably why you listen, because we have great guests. And today's no different. We have with us Dr. Judith Carney, who is a licensed clinical psychologist with expertise in mental health and well-being. She completed her master's and doctoral degree at Chestnut Hill College in Philadelphia and has worked with individuals, couples, and families from diverse backgrounds to address a wide range of clinical issues. Dr. Carney is also a certified specialist in retirement transition, striving to help individuals make healthy adjustments in response to changes in areas that include career, health, family, leisure, and social interests. Her pursuit is to help people build greater fulfillment and satisfaction in the retirement phase of life. Dr. Carney, thank you so much for joining us on Boomers Today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's nice to be here, and I appreciate that nice introduction.
Yeah, well, you well deserved. So I'm always interested. I think before we got on the show here and started, I told you my daughter is a psychotherapist, and I'm always curious of reasons maybe people decide to pursue a career. So what were maybe some of the key reasons you decided to pursue a career as a clinical psychologist?
Well, that's a story I kind of enjoy because I would say it was a happy accident. I was actually in another unrelated field, but in terms of personal interest, I love to read, and I realized how much I was gravitating towards stories about psychological issues, whether how people overcame a particular adversity in life. And as I delved into the stories more and more, I realized here I am launching my interest in psychology. Eventually, I learned about it. I learned as much as I could about it. And eventually it made no sense to keep learning without going back to school and getting a degree, and I changed my field. So I became a psychologist. When I started school, I just was following interests.
Just a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah. It was a few years ago. Actually, this is a second career, so I did start it later.
Okay.
Which actually kind of fits in with the boomer idea, boomer ideas that I talk about too, because we're moving into that phase of life that is considered, well, some people retire, but it's kind of like we live so much longer.
Right.
What are you going to do with that time?
What's retirement, right? What is retirement?
So unknowingly, here I am planning my retirement, working in the field of psychology.
Good for you. That's wonderful. That's great. So again, I say I've learned a lot from my own daughter in this field. And I've seen that people like yourself around the country, maybe around the world, but certainly I know around the country, have geared to certain specialties. It's really become a specialist field. What would you say kind of is your particular area of specialty?
Well, I like that question because basically when you go through training programs and field placements and so forth, they're focused on a very thorough, comprehensive gaining of knowledge and skills. So breadth and depth of training involves working in different treatment settings, different age groups, different levels of psychological functioning. But over time, knowing that I wanted to move into private practice, I started paying attention to what interests am I gravitating toward. And I always loved working with adults. So when I actually went then into, when I finished all my degree and training and postdoc and all that sort of stuff, I decided that my private practice is going to focus on serving adults.
So when you say adults, I'm going to say the word. Here we go. Ready? Are you talking
Yes.
about older adults?
Good question. So for instance, if I really want to narrow that specialty, I'm working with the baby boomer generation.
Okay, so
and it's not that I wouldn't, if somebody came to me who was 20, I consider you an adult, but basically I was very interested in the baby boomers.
Gotcha. Okay. Right. So we got a lot of people listening right in that category. So
yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Good.
Great. So what have you learned in the time, in working with that boomer generation? What's going on with us? I'm in it. I'm smack in the middle in the boomer generation.
Okay.
What's going on with us?
There's a few important things to consider. And about the generation itself, they talk about the different cohorts, and the baby boomers were always sort of kind of famous because no matter what stage of life they were in, people were attracted to it because of the sheer size of that generation. I think only the millennials are actually slightly bigger. But in terms of boomers, there's like 76 million of us, and I'm a boomer as well. And the fact that it's such a large population, the mental health organizations, the large organizations started clamoring in recent years, focusing research on what are we going to do to meet the needs of this huge population moving into what was traditionally retirement. Are we going to have enough professionals? Will they have the expertise that's needed? Even when it comes down to sort of living arrangements and so forth, how the basic focus was, how are we going to meet their needs? So given that I liked working with adults, I thought, okay, here's the prime opportunity to try to specifically address this cohort generation.
Yeah, I certainly didn't give you the heads up to prepare for the question I'm going to ask you, but you just give us a feel for it. I mean, what would, if you had to maybe pick the top 3 categories or reasons that this generation is coming to you to seek advice or seek help? What just off the top of your head, what would you say they would be? Top 3 reasons.
Okay. Well, one that I said was the size, serving their needs. Another big issue is longevity. If you think of the idea that traditionally we always retired at 65, because of longevity, we're living a whole lot longer. So by way of example, this is a pretty amazing personal story in terms of my own mother. She worked till 71, so that was a few years beyond the retirement age. But when she retired at 71, she lived roughly another 30 years. She was just shy of 100.
Wow.
So she's living like 30 years in this segment of time, basically deciding, well, what are you going to do with that? That's not just like 5 years or so, which used to be the case. We would retire and then you didn't live too much longer. So longevity is a big issue in how to keep life meaningful, vital. So another feature basically of boomers is they were the shakers, the movers and shakers, and still want to be active. A lot of the clients I have, they want to know how to be active. They still travel. They want to be involved socially with people, or maybe they're going to take on a second career. So
I'm just curious your mom's story. If you're okay answering this
Sure.
on her behalf, in your opinion, do you feel that she wished she did work long, even past 71? Or do you think she was happy that she made that move at 71?
Well, I'm not aware that she complained of any, lamenting over I retired. But a big facet for her was that she enjoyed her social life. She lived in the same town for a long time. She had a whole big circle of friends. Now, the place where she started to have trouble was as she's aging and she's getting into late 80s, 90s, her friends are dropping off.
Right,
and
right.
and so that is when it took a turn. But that is one of the issues with boomers. It's kind of like we've had our lives, if you think about it, they've been prescribed to us all our life. You go to school, then you go to college, or you get a job, then you get married, then you raise your family, then you retire, which people look forward to, thinking they earned this great vacation time. Won't it be wonderful? But it's kind of ends up in being disillusioned for a lot of people, because they're like, well, what am I supposed to do with my time?
Right,
It's good
right.
for a little while, but then it gets boring. They don't know what their purpose is. They don't have a routine that is meaningful.
I have a friend. It's interesting. I have a friend of mine who's a doctor, and he just made the decision recently to sell his practice and retire. And it kind of blew me away because he had a discussion with me. I mean, I'm not retired. I still work a zillion hours a week. I enjoy what I do, but he was just asking me, he says, so I'm just wondering what I'm going to do. I mean, here he is.
Yeah.
He made the decision to do this, but there's no plan in place.
Yes.
Is that common?
Yes, and that's the problem. People don't think about it. We've always sort of painted that picture of, oh, I can't wait till I retire. To do what? It's not really planned out. Maybe for some, and it's fortunate for them, but an awful lot of people don't plan for it. And then the other thing that kind of keeps them stuck, for instance, is I remember reading a story about a woman who became depressed in retirement, and she also had a sense of isolation because she was embarrassed to say, gosh, I thought it would be great. And people would approach her and say, like, oh, you having fun? You enjoying your freedom? And she would put on the happy face, but inside she was just miserable that she had no sense of purpose at this point.
Right. I mean, I enjoy golf, but I couldn't do it every day.
Yeah. I actually ran into someone who was like, okay, I played tennis for 4,000 days in a row. Now what do I do?
Right. So are these issues that are pretty common to discuss with your patients,
yes,
people you work with? Yeah.
And really what it is a problem of transition. Usually let's say if we move, if we're going to buy a house, if we're going to choose a career, we're putting a lot of thought and planning into it. But when people retire, have they really thought out what it's going to be like? For instance, a good example is work. If I've worked all my life, I think the first thing that people might think is like, oh, if I retire, where's my income? Or do I have enough money? But there's other things. When we go to work, we have a role, we have a sense of purpose. Maybe we're making achievements as we go through our career. We have a social circle. So as much as some people might complain about their work and the grind that we go through, it really gave a structure and a purpose to life.
And just came to mind what I wanted to ask you. Has anybody ever come to you and been debating whether they should retire or not, and based upon their personality and everything, you say to them, I don't think you should retire? Has that ever happened?
Well, basically, as a psychologist, I don't tell people what to do.
Yeah,
I just try to
that's true. Yeah.
Open their eyes to here's some things to consider.
Right.
Almost go into it with great awareness. Psychotherapy is known for basically raising your awareness and your consciousness to your choices and things you do and what happens and triggers that change our mood, for instance. the more we can become aware of things, the more we can take action and take control of our lives to do something about it.
Yeah, good point. Great point. So, Dr. Carney, we're going to take just a real quick break here. Just want to recognize our sponsor. When we come back, we'll let people know how they could get a hold of you, and we're going to discuss this bridge program we're going to talk about, which is not bridge the game. I don't think it's not
right.
Bridge, right. It's this particular specialty.
Bridge between two lives.
Bridge between two lives. So we're going to talk about that when we come back. So I want to remind everybody that today's show is sponsored by Senior Care Authority, an elder care consulting organization that has a national network of professionally trained and experienced local advisors to assist families in determining the right path for your loved ones. They'll discuss various long-term care options, whether it's in-home care, assisted living, memory care, nursing, or if you just need an advocate to get advice from. A local Senior Care Authority advisor can help you now. So for a free 30-minute consultation with an advisor right in your area, contact Senior Care Authority at 888-809-1231, or you could go directly to the website at www.seniorcareauthority.com, and you'll find an advisor in your area. We're back with Dr. Judith Carney, who's a licensed clinical psychologist with expertise in mental health and well-being. So great conversation, certainly timely with, especially with us boomers. So tell us more about this program that's focused on boomers that you refer to as the Bridge Program. Tell us a little bit more about that. Maybe before we do, let's do this, because I don't want to forget. I don't want to get to the end and forget this. Tell people how they could get a hold of you, your website, whatever it is you'd like to share with them, and then we'll talk about the Bridge Program.
Okay. Well, so my private practice is located in West Palm Beach. And I don't know, for instance, if you post address and phone numbers and so forth, but maybe the easiest route is if they just go to my website, it's going to have all that information. Do you want me to give the address?
Go ahead and give the website address, sure.
Okay, so it's www.drcarneyadultpsychology.com.
Okay, and that's Dr. Carney. That's DrCarney, adultpsychology.com.
Correct. Okay, yes. Great. And they'll find me there.
So, and any advice? I know you practice pretty much in Florida, but
yes.
If somebody is looking for somebody with expertise like yourself, any suggestions for them of could they contact you, or do you have a website that they could go to find somebody in their local area?
Well, actually, this kind of gives a plug to Psychology Today, which is a website, psychologytoday.com. And it is a directory for therapists that's well known. And I usually direct people there because it's very easy to use the website in terms of you just put in your zip code and it's going to show you all the therapists in your area. So for instance, if you're in California, New York, Pennsylvania, wherever, you would put in your zip code, and you can even click various tabs on there if you want to have them meet a certain insurance, a certain type of therapy, work with a certain clinical issue. So the site, I think it's pretty user-friendly.
Yeah, great. That's psychologytoday.com. Okay, great.
Yes.
Great. So let's go back to the Bridge Program. Tell us a little bit more.
Okay. Well, I called it the Bridge Program because basically it is focused on the boomers and the fact that they're at the stage of life where they are moving into retirement years. So Bridge is basically from your former work or whatever you did for your central role in life, moving toward the retirement side of life. That might mean continuing work. It might mean taking up some entrepreneurial passion you always had, or maybe it's going to mean traveling. But the important part of it is that it's a program that helps people plan it out thoughtfully so that you're going to consider all the important areas, which are basically like, how are you going to fill the routine of your day? A new career? How are you going to manage family relationships that might be changing. Maybe people are going to downsize. Maybe you're caring for aging parents. Maybe you're caring for adult children that still live with you or grandchildren. So it's how to manage the different roles that you're now taking on and doing it in a thoughtful and to a way to stay vital in life. Pays attention to your mental health, your physical health, processes of aging, social life.
So is this a program that you yourself have developed, or has you've kind of worked with a third party to help develop it, or talk to me about that?
Yeah, it is another company. The program was actually originally developed by clinical psychologists who did like decades of research on adult development and career interests and geropsychology, the psychology of aging. And he put together assessments that he thought extracted what was very important to consider for that time of life, to consider the major areas or roles that we play in our daily life. He put together assessments, which are basically questionnaires. One looks at our inner qualities, sort of the psychological self. Another looks at our lifestyle, the outer lifestyle we want to create. And he devised an assessment that you can actually, it's simple. You answer questions. It's not something you study for, but it will.
Is it more of a self-assessment? Is it more of a self-assessment, or something that they would have to consult with?
Well, you would, in other words, you would, if you wanted to take it, you would contact me and click on a link, take this test. It is then scored, and it churns out a report, like a profile of areas of strength that you have, and then areas that you'd be recommended to work on to make your life. The whole overall aim is to build greater satisfaction in your life and do it in a very thoughtful way that considers all the major areas.
I'm sure this would be applicable to a wide group, but knowing kind of our audience of listeners, is there a particular group, either age group or where they are in their life, that this would be just a great fit for to go through this bridge program?
Well, it fits the boomers because, gotcha. You know, where they were born, roughly 1946 to 1964, they are now 57 to 75. They are in this phase where they are needing to pay attention to what's going on. So either they're already in retirement and maybe they're not liking it and it would be helpful to take a look at what's going on, or they're moving towards retirement and they're like, okay, well, this is maybe a good idea to really plan it out so I know what I'm stepping into.
Got it. So I know what we talked about right after the break is that you're in Florida, and you're licensed there, but this program, would you be able to help them with this program, or would they have to go to somebody in their particular state?
Well, this is actually came out of a coaching program.
Gotcha.
But as a psychologist doing it through me, I am restricted to practicing where I'm licensed. But I think in the future, what I want to do is I'm either going to branch it out as a separate coaching business, or I'm also maybe more in favor of the idea of just kind of becoming a liaison between what research is saying in the field and the community that I work in, to bring sort of educational workshops on issues that I hear about every day. They can't sleep, or they're having conflict in their family, or there's decisions about, I am retiring, what should I do next? That's sort of a grieving process, you could say. So I'm thinking of doing just kind of an educational program that can sort of beef it up in terms of the actual clinical issues I'm hearing from people.
Right. So would you say, as a clinical psychologist, like you said earlier, you're not there to tell people what to do. You're trying to open up their minds a little bit, and maybe they come to their own conclusions on things. Is this program a little different, whereby once that these assessments are done, does it actually come out with hey, here's our recommendation from that assessment, or is it?
Yeah, that's the nice thing about assessments, actually. It's a way of gathering a bunch of information, and through the whole statistical scoring process, it organizes it, and it can show, the general thing it shows is strengths and weaknesses in different major areas of life. But it's a starting point where you can choose which ones you want to work on. How will you work on it? Like, I give them feedback on it, for instance. And I never tell people what to do. I just help them consider the various options and not get lost in terms of a sort of a single-minded focus.
Right. Got it. So we talked about this before, especially telehealth has become much more popular.
Yes.
What's your opinion on telehealth as we move forward into the years to come? Do you think it's going to be the norm? Or do you think it's going to be just people using telehealth because maybe their lives are too busy and they can't get to your office? What's your opinion of that?
Well, I actually have some people that prefer the in-person experience, but telehealth has really opened up the ability to meet people that otherwise could not get to your office, especially maybe as we age. Maybe we're not driving anymore. Maybe it's too inconvenient to get to the office. Since I'm licensed for Florida, for instance, I can treat somebody who's up in Tallahassee, right, versus Miami while I'm here in West Palm Beach. So it's expanded the possibilities for people, and I think it's been an important adjunct to the services, that you don't just have to come in person. And the fact that it's done through video and audio, it's very much a human contact experience. From
your perspective, what do you see as the pluses and the minuses? Again, I'll just speak. Listen, I haven't done it, but I know I do a lot of in my business, many more of these Zoom type calls, right?
Yeah.
And you do see everybody's face, and you can see expressions. But I would think, as a clinical psychologist, you're not seeing the entire body language, right? I mean, would you say that so could be maybe a little bit of a disadvantage for you to give advice to them, or what are your thoughts there?
It's a possibility, but I guess in my experience, I haven't seen that to be the case.
Oh, okay, good.
Because essentially you're seeing the person from like chest level up, and our face says a lot of stuff, our eye contact, whether we're fidgeting, if we seem to be moving around a lot. And so you can see an awful lot of the body language, gotcha. But the face kind of says a lot of things.
Yeah, good. Well, I could talk to you forever about this, but unfortunately we're kind of out of time. But I'll just, maybe ask you just any words of wisdom for our listeners here that may be, in that boomer generation, thinking about retirement, not sure what they want to do or how they want to do it. Any words of wisdom for them?
I guess I would say be curious. That always comes to mind, because my own curiosity opened up a whole world. I think when we learn and we ask questions and we be curious about what's out there, we learn of opportunities that we might never have tripped across, So
Great.
Don't get stuck in feeling like there's no answer. I really like to help people in terms of, here's what is, now what can we do about it? And let's open up our options.
Great suggestion. Dr. Judith Carney, thank you so much. Check her out at Dr. Carney, adultpsychology.com. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. And I want to thank all of you for joining us on Boomers Today. Be safe out there.
You've been listening to Boomers Today with Frank Sampson. To learn more about today's show, visit boomerstodayradio.com and join us next time for another edition of Boomers Today.